Economic cycles. So the economies are rarely stable and they operate in cycles. So the economic cycle defined then is natural fluctuation of the economy between periods of expansion, growth, and contraction, recession. So economic cycles continued, upswing/boom. The unemployment decreases, employment levels increase, inflation pressure builds, there's rapid growth, production rises, spending rises, and profits increase. So that's what happens during a when the economy's growing. All these things happen here. So I'll put this in the chat. And then downswing recession, unemployment increases, employment levels fall, inflation pressures decrease, growth is low or negative, production decreases, spending decreases, and profits decrease. So economic cycles 4 phases. There's a recovery, expansion, peak, recession, contraction, and trough depression. So over time, throughout history, there's always been recoveries, expansions, then peak, then recession, contraction, then trough depression, and then it repeats itself. So it repeats itself. It's a cycle. All these phases happen, and the economy just goes up and down, up and down, up and down over time, always. It never changes. Like it's always like that over time. So economic cycles 4 phases: recovery, expansion, rapid growth. Interest rates tend to be low, so investment increases, production increases, inflation pressure builds, unemployment falls, employment levels increase. So economic cycles 4 phases: peak is the top of the cycle, growth reaches a maximum, employment is at or near full employment, inflation is evident, demand, prices, and costs of production increase, resources become scarce, imbalances start to occur, need to be corrected, lead to a contraction. So recession, contraction, demand decreases, profits decrease, growth slows, unemployment rises, employment levels decrease, inflation slows or falls. Troughs, depression is the bottom of the cycle. Profits decrease, maybe low or negative. Unemployment high, employment levels low, prices decrease, demand is low, production is low. So what cycle are we in? Gross domestic product, GDP, interest rates, employment rates, consumer spending. So we can look at that to figure out which cycle we are in. So, so in this case, if we're going to do that, the recession has negative GDP growth. Employment decreases, consumer spending decreases. And then expansion has positive GDP growth, employment increases, and consumer spending increases. So those are the differences there. I'll put this in the chat here. So yeah. Now let's get to the next thing here. So I put that in the chat for you. So we'll get to the next thing here. So we're going to do an activity on this. So gross domestic product is the monetary value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time period. It's usually calculated annually, can be done quarterly, and it can be calculated different ways, but all should result in the same value. It is a broad measurement of a nation's overall economic activity. So GDP equals consumption plus government spending plus investment plus net exports. So GDP is calculated with all those things together. So it's spending, government, so it's consumption and government spending, investment, and net exports. So it's all that stuff together. So employment rate is a measure of the extent to which available labor resources, people available to work are being used. It's calculated as a ratio of the employed to the working age population. It's sensitive to economic cycle. Its long term is also affected by government policies on higher education, income support, and facilitation of employment for minorities. So measuring the rate of unemployment helps determine how close a nation is to full employment. Types of unemployment include frictional, so it's short-term employment. It always exists, has little impact on the economy. So example is if you're working somewhere and you want to get a better job. So let's say the job you have doesn't fit the skill set you have. So let's say you're working you're working a desk job when you're uh trained to be a doctor. You should be in the hospital caring for patients. So you may want to search for a doctor job. So that would be frictional unemployment if you don't have a job and you're trying to get a job in your field. Also, for example, maybe you maybe you're trained to be a lawyer and you're working as a cashier. You may want to search to become a lawyer. So that would be frictional unemployment. If you're trying to become a lawyer and can't find any jobs in the law field, that'd be frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment would be due to technology. So maybe you lost your job because there was a robot cashier. So maybe you want to be a cashier, but there's an automated cashier. So you can't be a cashier. Also, maybe you lost your job because of automation. Maybe your job was automated. Maybe they replaced you with a robot. So that'd be structural. Maybe replaced by technology. That'd be structural. So it's anything that's if you're replaced by technology or economic growth, that's structural. Cyclical is when you're unemployed because of a recession. So maybe the economy shrank, so you lost your job because the economy shrank. That's what happens. So if there's a recession, you may lose your job. That's cyclical unemployment. And then seasonal is when let's say the the summer's over, so you don't have any landscaping work anymore. That's seasonal employment. Also, if the ski resort closes because it's summer, you would lose your job because it's summer and they don't have ski hills open. Also, working for a golf course, when it's winter, you can't work at a golf course, so you may be laid off during the winter. Farming during harvest, maybe in the winter you won't be able to do that, so you'll be laid off. Retail during holiday season, you may be laid off. Yeah. So inflation price stability is the overall price of goods and services. Goal is to keep prices as steady as possible. It affects purchasing power. So if prices go up, you can purchase less for each dollar. So your dollar goes your dollar goes doesn't provide as much value out of it. And also, so yeah, your dollar is worth less if prices go up. And if businesses anticipate a rise in prices, they will increase production in hopes of achieving more profit. If consumer anticipate a rise in prices, they may make more purchases earlier on before prices rise too much. Demand pull is when demand for goods is greater than the supply. Excess demand tends to pull prices higher as people are willing to pay more for something that is in short supply. Cost push is when costs of production increase, making production more expensive. Increased production expense pushes up the price of the final goods. CPI measuring inflation. CPI, Consumer Price Index, is an index of market price of a typical basket of goods and services purchased by the average consumer. Food and beverages, clothing, transportation, housing, medical care, recreation, and education. Most common method of measuring inflation. How it works, a base period is chosen and prices are set as 100 for this period. Current prices are expressed as a percentage of prices in that base period. A rise in CPI means that prices are increasing. E.g., CPI for July 2021 in Canada was 142.3, which means they've increased almost 50% compared to the base period 1982 to 1984. CPI is used to show how much prices increase. This is how they calculate inflation. But one of the problems with CPI is that the the they don't measure all good prices. They take out some prices, so there are some prices not included. So the CPI may be increasing by a certain amount, but it should be increasing by more because certain products are excluded. If they included all those products, it may be a different percentage increase or decrease. So producer price index measures prices paid by producers slash wholesalers for things like raw materials, partially finished goods, and finished products. Uses 1982 as a base year. Changes in PPI can indicate potential price changes for business and consumers. So why do we care? It's not just numbers. Analysis of the numbers is important. Assess which global economies are best for your business. So yeah, we got through this here. So that was great there. And this is located under the week 2 stuff here. So now let's do. So which of the following is not one of the key economic indicators? So it'd be CPI, because CPI is used to calculate inflation. We don't really look at CPI as an economic indicator. We just use it to calculate inflation. So it's mostly just for calculation. So which of the following is not a factor of GDP? So it'd be consumer savings. So consumer savings is not part of GDP. Business spending is under investment. So business spending is the same thing as investment. Yeah, so investment is part of GDP. Yeah, business spending and investment are the same thing. So which of the following would be included in GDP? So Subway sandwich would be included in GDP because it's a final good. So there's any final good. So bread purchased to make your Subway sandwich, that's a intermediate good, so that goes into making a Subway sandwich, so that wouldn't be counted. Sandwich made in Mexico and sold in cafeteria, that wouldn't be part of GDP because it was made in another country, so it wouldn't be part of our GDP. And then sandwich you bought from your friend, that wouldn't be included in GDP because it's hard to, you can't, that's, you probably bought it with cash and it's very hard to track cash payments. They usually just track debit, credit, and payments that are digital because that's easy to track, but cash payments are impossible to track. So which of the following is example of a non-durable good? Subway sandwich. Yes. So healthy rate of economic growth during normal times would be what? So 3.5 to 4.5%. That's a pretty healthy rate of economic growth. The reason why is because it's not too high and it's not too low. too high economic growth. The problem is with too high economic growth, there's too much increase in prices. So things become unaffordable quickly if it's 5 to 6%. And then if it's too low, there isn't enough jobs being created. So 3.5 to 4.5%, enough jobs are created and prices aren't going up too much. CPI measures what? The price of the market basket, yes. 2013 market basket cost $980, 2014 $1,000. What is the inflation rate? So it's 2%. So how you do that is you 1,000 minus 980 divided by 980. And that would be about 2%, roughly, like approximately. It wouldn't be exactly 2%, but it'd be almost there. So a healthy rate of inflation would be what? So 1.5 to 2.5%. They want it to be between there because 1.5 to 2.5% inflation is best for the economy because prices aren't rising too much. So things are still affordable, and also yeah, so prices are stable. The prices aren't going up too much. That's usually the target they look for. So no one under the age of what is included in the civilian labor force? So 16. So no one under the age of 16 is included in the civilian labor force. Who is not included in the labor force? My grandma living in a retirement home. So retired people are not included in the labor force. Also, people who have stopped looking for work are not in the labor force. And students that are just students and not looking for a job, they're not in the labor force. 500,000 people working, 35,000 looking for a job, 16,000 retired. What is the unemployment rate? So yeah, 6.5%. Excellent. So to do that, the unemployment rate here, unemployment rate equals people, so people looking for a job divided by people working plus people looking for a job. So that's the equation there. So it would be, in that case, 35,000 divided by 500,000 plus 35,000 equals unemployment rate. Yeah, so that'd be the equation there. And then the downside of the business cycle is called the what? Contraction or recession. Contraction or recession, they both mean the same thing. Just before the economy begins a recovery, it has reached the what? Trough. Total amount of goods and services that consumers want in an economy is what? Aggregate demand. Yes. The main factor affecting aggregate supply is what? Factors of production, yes. When aggregate demand decreases, price level and real GDP both what? So decrease. When aggregate supply increases, price levels what? While GDP what? So when aggregate supply increases, price level